guys, welcome back to my channel. I am Britt, and if you haven't subscribed yet, you probably should because I talk about geeky things, and today we're going to be doing a Beast Morphers episode review. So things may sound different, things may look different. I have redone the background of my videos. The pictures are all the same, but the mantle is what's different. Plus I have a new microphone because my last shotgun microphone decided to die on me, so we're here. This is the second time I've had to film this video because I didn't catch the fact that there was a staticky noise behind my microphone because I hadn't edited anything in a while. So here we go. Let's go ahead and do this episode review. It is for Beast Morphers Season 2, Episode 10, the Evox Snare. And I'm really sad that I have to refilm this because honestly, I loved my first video and I'm very sad, but I'm not even going to like pretend to reenact exactly how I experienced the last video. But let's just get down to it. If you guys want to skip the full episode recap, you guys can click this timestamp right here, which will bring you to just my thoughts. Mind you, my thoughts will also come with spoilers. Just be aware that this is going to come with spoilers regardless of the portion of the video that you are watching. So we open the episode with the commander expressing that all of the Morphex towers are going to be shut down and drained, and that the Morphex is going to be placed back into the Morphin grid, obviously because we found out right before our break, or well, we didn't find out, we knew, but the Rangers found out right before the break that Evox is actually Devin's dad, or that Evox is in Devin's dad's body. Nate has been working on a specific weapon in which he would be able to stop Evox in his tracks, literally. It is a freezing mechanism. Now there are issues with this freezing mechanism and we're gonna get to those, but essentially they created yet another crossbow. Ben and Betty come in and are funny as per usual. They bring in a mannequin with a suit where Nate is able to show how this works by freezing the mannequin. Then Ben and Betty freak out because it's their dad's wedding suit, his wedding tux, and they're freaking out and are funny. Ben tries to get it out with a jackhammer and you get to see the worst CGI that Power Rangers has ever done, and that says a lot. It was so bad. Devin gets a little cranky with Nate because this plan, while will stop Evox in his tracks and be a way for them to figure out how to separate Evox and Devin's dad, this could still take a long time to do. It's not like it's gonna happen tomorrow. So Devin starts getting cranky with Nate, saying that this isn't a great plan because he wants to be able to save his father a lot sooner than that. And so Devin decides that he wants to try and figure out another way to save his father that doesn't involve freezing Evox. During his research, he discovers the RPM Power Rangers, where he mentions Dylan from Power Rangers RPM. He doesn't mention Dylan by name, but mentions their Black Ranger who had an issue with a virus inside of his body. We know this to be Dylan from RPM. They didn't even specify necessarily RPM, just a Ranger team from another universe, and this Black Ranger who had a virus. So obviously if you are familiar with RPM, you know that it's Dylan from RPM, and that maybe if he could reach out to their mentor, Dr. K, that perhaps she could assist him in figuring out how to save his father a little bit quicker and a little bit safer, essentially. So he puts out a message to Dr. K in hopes that she will in fact respond. There is then an attack with a monster and Blaze and Roxy, as Blaze and Roxy are trying to steal the Morphex from a tower. Well, they're stealing it from a truck that recently took the Morphex from the tower. So they're trying to steal that. The Rangers are split up and fighting Blaze and Roxy and fighting the monster. The original three are able to Devin and Zoe are able to defeat the monster, and Steel, Nate, and Ravi are able to destroy the Blaze and Roxy, but also the truck that has the Morphex. At that point, the commander is expressing the fact that they can't exactly take more effects out of a specific tower. They can't exactly shut it down. So Devin says that they need to protect it. They need to have people stationed at it. And then she says, no, that doesn't make much sense because that would be too obvious that there's still more effects in that tower. Leave it completely unguarded and Evox will just think it's shut down and drained just like all the others. Scrozzle is actually listening to this, and so Scrozzle is able to kind of go and tell Evox. What Scrozzle doesn't know is that they were hoping that somebody was listening in and that it was bait to get Evox to the tower so that they could freeze Evox. They needed to draw Evox out of hiding. A Gigadrone attacks, but Devin finds out that Dr. K has responded to his message. So he gets permission to go and speak with Dr. K while the others all go fight the Gigadrone in the Megazord. There really isn't much to the Megazord fight. The Megazord fight ends pretty quick, like a lot of Megazord fights tend to end in Beast Morphers. So they go off, they defeat the monster, nothing to kind of report there. However, when Devin goes to talk to Dr. K explains that what happened with Dylan was completely different than what's happening with his dad. This would have been a really good time, even though the way that they tied in Legacy Rangers really made sense in the sense of then she brought up Dino Charge and Xenowing. But at the same time, like, why wouldn't that also be something that they would bring up with Dino Thunder, which also is going to be a part of this team up. Now, granted, I know that none of them, from what I understand, none of them are appearing out of costume. Only Jason and then members of Dino Charge are appearing out of costume or out of suit. So that being said, I mean, I guess it makes sense, but Anton and Mesogog experience the same thing. So I don't know, but either way, that she only brings up how they were able to save Xenowing from his evil counterpart. She tells him about these split emitters that were used to be able to do that. And so Devin goes and talks to Nate, who just happens conveniently to have this old Ranger technology, and apparently old Ranger technology from other universes as well, to be able to help out. And so he asks, do you happen to have these split emitters? And Nate kind of shrugs it off and says, I think so. They're probably in the way back of this particular vault that he has. So the others go to freeze Evox, and Devin decides to stay behind and enlist the help of Ben and Betty because Ben and Betty are funny, though they actually do get to be helpful. It is a first, at least from my perspective, of them being helpful on purpose. Sometimes they make them helpful on accident, but that is not... We all know how I feel about Ben and Betty. They end up walking into this place that is actually more like a museum setup. It doesn't look like a old Ranger technology vault. It looks like things are very well maintained, which doesn't make sense to Nate's reaction to how hard it might be to find these split emitters. Betty ends up finding them pretty quick. They don't spend a lot of time. They look over a couple of things like the Mystic Force morphers and a few other things that are in there as well. But everything seems to be laid out beautifully and well, like, maintained. So do we expect any more from Judd Lynn at this point? Because I certainly do not. Though this was directed by Simon Bennett, so this better not be foreshadowing of Simon Bennett running this show. Then we go to the other Rangers who are waiting for Evox to freeze him. They shoot the crossbow, which ends up being completely anticlimactic because Evox not only knows that it's happening, he stops it from happening and shoots it back at them. And do they freeze? This is Judd Lynn. Of course they don't freeze. He's the king of convenience writing. Devin shows up with a blaster and he is trying to get himself to actually shoot Evox, but Evox turns into Devin's dad, even though he needs more effects to do that and to maintain that body, and does not have more facts. So hi, Judd. This is such a you episode, Judd Lynn. Devin hesitates because he's staring his father in the face, not Evox, and it's in that mindset. He kind of goes into kind of a Trent kind of mentality, which I kind of liked. I did genuinely enjoy that, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. but he hesitates to be able to attack his own father, because even though he knows it's Evox and he knows it's not really his father, it's still his dad. He's still looking into the eyes of his father, and that is hard for him. But then just as he lowers the blaster, Ben and Betty are able to transfer the split emitters to the scene surrounding Evox, and they split Devon's dad and Evox from each other, freeing Devon's dad. Devon's dad has no real memory of being Evox, so he's not going to be much help as far as their plans or anything like that. That's pretty convenient as well, but it's fine. We'll talk about it in a minute. And then the towers are just put back into use, just normally put back into use, because that makes sense as well. And that's how the episode ends. So what you missed from my first recording was me thinking, actually, when we started the video, that the episode was actually pretty good. And then as I recapped the story, I realized all of the issues production-wise with the actual episode itself, and not just your normal issues with Power Rangers. A lot of these are seriously just issues that a very lazy storyteller will tell. And that's always been my issue with Saban. That's always been my issue with Judlin. Aside from when Judd and Saban worked on in the initial Saban seasons before it was sold to Disney, but after Neo Saban, it's like all of a sudden they became lazy storytellers. Now, granted, I know that Judlin had nothing to do with Samurai. Actually, Tony Oliver did, and that's a whole different can of worms that I know I don't want to open. And he had nothing to do with Megaforce, but he did come back in during Dino Charge, and that's where the laziness really, I mean, Megaforce was lazy, but Dino Charge was one of those ones where I was so heartbroken because season 1 was so good, and then season 2 was just trash. And it was like Judd and Saban walked into the writer's room one day, they're like, we're trying too hard. And that was where the laziness really started to come through, was season 2 of Dino Charge. Now granted, like I said, there were definitely some issues with like Megaforce, which Judlin had nothing to do with. However, Dino Charge is where it became real lazy. So this episode, initially when I turned it off, I think I was on a Dr. K high, because it was really great to see Olivia Tennant again. It was really great to see Dr. K, and it was really fun because you could tell like how young she really was in RPM, because she looks nothing like that anymore. She sounds really nothing like that anymore. She just looks and sounds older, and it's just really interesting to see, because I forget how young she was when she actually filmed those episodes. So it is pretty fun to actually sit down and see that and see how much she's changed over the years, since it's been so long since we've seen Dr. K in Power Rangers. It's been since 2009, so it's been a while. But yeah, so I was on this high with Dr. K, and as I started to recap the episode is when I started to realize all of the issues and realizing that this was actually a terrible episode. But let's talk about the things other than Dr. K that I liked, because Dr. K was the first point of things that I thought were good about this episode. The overall story was really cool, while I feel like it was also rushed, which we'll get to when I talk about the bad stuff. The overall story was actually pretty cool. Like I said, I really liked the fact that they kind of took Devon into this Trent kind of area of characterization, which I really like, because I like the Trent character. I like how he kind of battles with himself about his duty as a Power Ranger, but also it's his father. And even though the other Rangers don't actually know that, and he's the only one that does, you still see this internal struggle with Trent, and I really appreciated that. So I really appreciated the fact that they did that with Devon, that they had Devon kind of going against the other Rangers, being like, hey, no, this is something that I want to try and do differently. Whether it succeeded or not, he didn't want to do what Nate had created, even though it was kind of the easiest out. And obviously it ended up being great that he had this other plan, because of the fact that obviously the arrow didn't work. So that being said, I do definitely appreciate the story overall, while also lazy, but we'll get to that in a minute. I like that Betty was finally useful. Like I said during the recap of the episode, I've always thought that Ben and Betty were just not useful characters. I just didn't like them. I still don't like them. I still think that they're worthless characters. And this has nothing to do with the actors, but it has everything to do with how the characters are handled by the writing and somewhat the acting, but that's a whole different conversation to have. And that's a whole different craft to hone. They're just green. That's the only reason that the execution of character by acting isn't great, is because they're green and not knowing exactly how to pull off proper slapstick comedy. But it also comes down to the director, in this case Simon Bennett, who is not able to pull forward what they are capable of doing, what their strengths are, and that is so important as a director. Either way, I like the fact that they actually made Betty useful in this episode, because it's been such a, for me, a hair-pulling, just frustrating experience to have these stupid comedic duos in Neo Saban that have nothing to do with the story other than just funny, which they're not even funny. At least like Bulk and Skull were tied into the civilian story somehow. Even the Ranger story from time to time. With these guys, they're just there for the comic relief, and I just don't like that, especially because the actors don't know how to do comedy properly. And that just comes with learning, that comes with honing that craft a little bit better, or you're just not good at it. Like me, I'm not good at comedy. I'm not sitting here being like, they're bad at comedy, I'm better at comedy. No, I know they're bad at comedy because I'm bad at comedy. And I know how bad I am, and I know how much I would love to be able to be talented in comedy. I'm not. Anyway, it's nice to see it was nice to see Betty being useful. We're skipping my last point because I proved myself wrong with that one. Anyway, my last point was no major plot holes. Maybe it's not necessarily plot holes, it's just convenience writing. Let's talk about the things I didn't like about it. Convenience writing. And so Judd Land, like I said, is the king of convenience writing. We need these characters who are currently in the city to be in a canyon, so we're just gonna put them there. That's a Megaforce reference. That's actually 20th anniversary reference. Go watch that video if you haven't. But either way, the convenience writing is there. The convenience of the fact that this weapon was shown at the very beginning of the episode, that, oh, it works beautifully, it works perfectly, and if it hits something, it's gonna freeze it. And then Evox is able to deflect it, just conveniently deflect it. And not only that, but when it goes to hit the Rangers, now it's just not gonna work because it just isn't gonna work. We just need to make sure it doesn't work. There was no indication of a fail safe. There was no indication of a fail rate of any kind. It just worked. And then when it was convenient for it to not work, it didn't work. Plus the whole notion of Nate just randomly having all this old Ranger technology that we've never heard of before, unless there's something that I missed from an earlier episode, but there is no indication that he ever had this vault before. And all of a sudden now he has this vault, and not only does he have this vault, but it just happens to have something from a team that's not even in their universe, because I don't see dinosaurs running around. So clearly not in their universe, and happens to have the very thing that Devin needs to save his dad. Convenient. I hate convenience writing. It's so lazy. It's just so lazy, and I hate it. And so and that's what I started to realize was the convenience writing as I came off of this Dr. K high and started coming down from that and realizing, oh, this episode is littered with convenience writing. Littered with it. And it just makes me sad, because convenience writing, I don't know what I hate worse, an episode filled with convenience writing or a clip episode, because I hate both. And I thought this was gonna be a clip episode because they had a clip at one point in there, and I thought it was gonna be a clip episode, so I was ready to write down clip episode, because I hate clip episodes. Anyway, but yeah, so the convenience writing was all over the place, and I just don't find that creative. I don't find that good. I find that to be incredibly lazy, incredibly green, and something that Judd Lynn should not be doing, since he has been writing and producing television for 30 years. not something that he should be doing. But when you choose to never hone your craft properly, it's something that you fall victim to. I used to be a big fan of convenience writing because it's so easy and I didn't have to think about it. But that was back when I was writing fan fiction, and fan fiction is never known to be good. If you write fan fiction, you think you write well, that's fine. You can think that. Fan fiction, it's like going to karaoke. Like, it's not fun if you sit there and listen to frickin' Mariah Carey singing karaoke. It's more fun when you hear someone that is tone deaf singing karaoke. Like, that's the whole point of karaoke. It's not supposed to be good. Fan fiction's not supposed to be good. But it was where I was able to hone more of that craft and learn and grow as a writer. And I was able to really take on some of those things. But then after learning more about writing, learning more about script writing specifically, I just do not like convenience writing. And as I grew older and I grew more in the artist that I am as a writer, I learned that convenience writing is terrible and you shouldn't do it. So Judd Lynn, stop. Now granted, I know obviously Beast Morphers is done filming and Judd Lynn is no longer show running the show. He is now just executive producing, just like he always has for many, many years, but no longer actively running the show. And now Simon Bennett's taking over the show running. Let's just hope Simon Bennett learned from other people and not Judd Lynn. I always put them on this list, but Ben and Betty, I just don't think they're funny. I think the creation of the characters was dumb. I think that well, okay, that's aggressive. I do apologize. The creation of the characters was not good. The creation of the characters was there just because for some reason Saban and Judd Lynn feel as though, why don't I say Judd Lynn all the time. I never say hi, I'm Saban. I always just say Saban. Anyway, it's always just them wanting to recreate the magic that was Bulk and Skull. You're not going to recreate that magic, especially with green actors. You might be able to recreate that magic in a very different way, but look at the comedic duos that did well. Bulk and Skull, Mara and Capri, Devin and Cassidy, all of the comedic duos that did well, they were all very different from each other. You are just trying to create carbon copies of Bulk and Skull and hiring very green actors who don't know how to actually do slapstick comedy well in order for you to do these characters, and it's just not doing well. Like, production value wise, I mean, if you like Ben and Betty, that is completely up to you. Liking something is very, very subjective. It's very, very if you like it, that is all you. Like, that's fine. But from an actor's point of view, from a director's point of view, from a producer's point of view, I would never have hired those two actors to play those roles, because unless they had stellar auditions and then they sucked while they were doing it, and again, this has nothing to do with them as actors. If for whatever reason they come across this video, I want you guys to understand it has nothing to do with you as actors. I think you guys are fine actors. When you guys are playing dialogue, you guys do well. It's the slapstick that's a problem, but that's okay, because I would also be really terrible at slapstick. Slapstick is a very specific kind of comedy, and it's very hard. People spend their entire lives studying slapstick comedy. It's not something that is easy. People spend their lives and never get good at it. It has everything to do with the fact that it is just not a talent that you currently possess. Anyway, it has nothing to do with the acting ability of these actors. It has everything to do with the fact that they are put into a position, put into a job, put into roles that do not fit them. And that's the problem. And I just don't like it. I've never liked the comedic duos within Power Rangers, except for when they were handled well, like I said, with the 3 pairs that I said before. Even when they did bring Bulk back with Spike and Samurai, that was terrible. Absolutely terrible. Paul Schreier did not play off that kid well. Whether he was actually a kid, I don't know, but he was supposed to be a kid. But he didn't play off the kid well. And then, what were their names in Ninja Steel? Monty and something. Again, not good. And fart jokes. I'm not big into fart jokes, but that was a whole season ago, 2 seasons ago. I don't like the comedic duos that they have been creating in recent years. It just isn't good. So Ben and Betty, always on the list for bad, because as long as I see them in an episode trying to be funny, I don't appreciate it. There was such a rushed end to this Evox dad storyline. It was like they ran out of ideas and they were like, okay, we need to separate them now. because we're just out of ideas for what to do. Excuse you. We're just out of ideas of what to do. We need to end this storyline now because we have no other ideas. We have no other plans for what we're gonna do with these two characters being joined together. And they just separated them because it was easy. I just didn't like how it was rushed. I feel like they could have really made this particular episode, they could have made this a couple or maybe even up to 3 for a long-standing story with different stories. Obviously make it episodic in the sense of different monsters, different civilian stories, but at the end of the day, it's still the overarching storyline of saving Devin's dad from Evox. So they could have done that. I just feel like it was very rushed. I feel like there was no point to Evox being Devin's dad. And then especially with the end, with them just randomly putting the towers back into use. I mean, Evox learned a lot of information. Devin's dad has no memory of being Evox, but Evox has all the memories of being Devin's dad. He had gained a lot of information, and unless that is used later on in this season, there was no point to them being connected at all, other than just because, hey, this is a dramatic thing we can do. It just wasn't good. Just wasn't good. All in all, this episode, while I thought was good initially, I come to realize it was actually terrible. So, production value-wise. All right, that's it. So there you guys have it. Those are my thoughts on Power Rangers Beast Morphers season 2, episode 10, the Evox Snare. Let me know in the comments below what you guys thought of this episode, the good, the bad, the ugly. And let me know if you like this episode down in the comments below. And we'll see you guys all next week. Bye.